Aussies are calling for rent controls. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee because we're going to talk about everyone's favourite subject, rent control. Now, I tend to assume that there's a certain level of common knowledge and understanding out there with the average Aussie. So when we hear things like the Greens say we need to have rent controls and demonizing landlords, that the average person will realize that's a stupid and terrible idea, and there's significant precedent of why we should laugh at those ideas. But that's not right, is it? It's not right at all. I think I'm making too many assumptions. I think people are, well, they're just in their own little bubble. They just see their rents going up and they're just struggling to make ends meet. And that's just another cost going up and up and up. And they're thinking, well, maybe if we vote for people, the problem can go away. Just like remember how electricity was going to get cheaper if we voted for Albo? What happened to that? Let me know. But I thought we'd have a look. Well, we'd have a look at a few things. First, this article here from Yahoo News. Aussies call for rent control as rental prices soar. And written by Graham Cook, Head of Research at Finder. So we'll look at this. We'll discuss rent control, and I have a poll where I've asked my viewers if you are calling for rent control. Now, the viewership here is probably about 90% Australian and 80% male, with a big chunk of you 30 years and above. So take from that what you will when we look at the results here and maybe compare them to Finder. It could be a bit of sample bias here. So, and I know a lot of you are financial gigachads. So, as Australia's rental price continues to climb, tenants are crying out for rent controls. Data from the Reserve Bank of Australia reveals advertised rents have surged by 25% since 2019. Given the simultaneous decline in vacancy rates, the upward trajectory of rental prices shows no signs of abating. Supply and demand. Recent research, is it research or a survey? From Finder, further underscores the urgency of the situation, indicating that nearly half of renters, 45%, found it challenging to meet their rent obligations in April. Moreover, an overwhelming majority of Australians, 83%, are advocating for the introduction of rent controls. This is concerning. We are certainly lurching more and more towards an interventionist government here in Australia. It's not changing. So let's have a look at what rent controls would do. And here's one example. Here's a few supply-demand graphs. And what we have a look here. Here we go. So, free market rent, what's meant to happen is you've got the short-run supply of rented housing and the demand for rented housing, and it reaches an equilibrium position where the quantity of rented properties and the amount that they can charge is here at an equilibrium. Now, what's happened is certain curves move differently. So say suddenly, demand increases for rental property. Or, well, demand is always increasing for rental property, but the supply isn't keeping up, maybe due to, well, pushing a whole lot of construction in other parts of the sector due to government stimulus, or demand is growing because you've got 500,000 people arriving in the country every year. Now, let's say demand's increased, so that shifts this line over here. So that means the demand for property is at this level, Q2. And you're going, okay, fantastic. But supply stays the same. Okay, it hasn't shifted. Or it's shifted, we'll say, a little bit too. But not much. So that means the new equilibrium is over there. There. There we go. I'll rub that out. There we go. I'm doing this with a mouse. I need to get my tablet back. But the price has gone up. Rent's going up due to supply and demand. And, okay, this is a simplification of what's going on, but it's a good way to get an understanding of it. And the prices are sticky. Once they go up, they take a long time to go down. And, people will deal with a lot of issues, and supply is difficult to increase. I think long term, a lot of the issues are councils and not in my backyard crowd hampering development. But, that's not going to change anytime soon here in Australia, guys. Not with the push of more government intervention that we're seeing. Now, let's say we introduce a rent ceiling here. Okay, you're going to say the maximum rent now can only be this. Okay, so you think, okay, now, so rent is, I don't know, we'll say $50 a week. We'll say maximum, down from 75. And then a whole lot of people are going, awesome, that's cheaper. So I'll instead of living with a mate and in a share house, I'll move out and get my own place. People will, move out and get other places. They'll upgrade. So demand has gone up. So at this price level, at this max rent, the demand is here. So it's much higher, though, than what the equilibrium demand is. But you've got to understand people aren't going to be renting them out that cheap. So let's keep going here and see what happens. It creates an excess demand here from what exists, and you get reduced landlords. Now people are going, the properties don't disappear. They either sell them to homeowners, but you always want a certain level of rental stock on there, because people go through rental properties at different times in their lives, when they're moving around, when they're learning. That's a normal part of life. And we saw what happened in Ireland, where they screwed with their rental system, and there was a huge shortage in property. So you get a reduction in rental property. It causes a fall in supply, because people go, well, I can't afford to rent out this property at this level, so I'm going to do something else. Maybe I'll rent it at Airbnb, or I'll sell it. I'll exit the market, or I won't even bother having it for rent. I'll just sit at the property there. It's more hassle than it's worth dealing with all this BS. Or you get a shadow market where people illegally sublet it. So a rent cap, rent controls are not the best solution. There's a lot of implications that people don't seem to understand. And there's ample evidence of this failing again and again and again. But yet, 83% of Australians, at least according to this poll, 83% want them. Now, I'd argue, you look at Ireland, look at New York, look at all the places where they've got rent controls that have failed. Why don't we learn from that? Why don't we not copy the mistakes of other countries? That to me seems like a common sense interpretation of other examples. But we're not dealing with common sense, are we? We're not dealing with precedent. We're dealing with politics and sound bites and people's emotional responses to day-to-day struggles. But they're going to vote for stuff that's just going to screw them over more, because you'll see people, supply will decrease in the rental market. People will get out because they can't be bothered. Let me close that there so we can have a look at your response afterwards. The rental squeeze can be attributed to various factors, including the 12 consecutive cash rate increases, which have added $12,000 to the annual cost of servicing an investor home loan. This, coupled with rising property costs, has resulted in landlords passing on their increasing expenses to tenants. Data from CoreLogic shows that rents have increased by an average of 10% nationwide in the last 12 months, with median asking rents peaking in Sydney at $660 for a house and $560 for units. Okay, and what else do we have here? Home ownership has been sidelined. Yep, we know about that. Okay, so the most shocking takeaway from this article is how many Australians, at least in this Finder poll, want rent controls. 83%. So I'll have a shot of coffee and maybe guess in the comments I'm going to ask you to guess what percent of rent control you people want, you viewers of the channel want, but you can just go bloody well check on on the thing. Give me a second while I have a coffee, because I'm tired. Okay, let's jump over and have a look. So remember, 83% of Australians, according to Finder, and 80% of HeiseSays viewers have voted for this, of 593 votes. And you can find this on the community tab, guys, at the channel. Let me see. I'll show you here. Where is it? Here. under community. You can find all the different polls if you don't know that, by the way. So let's have a look. I voted yes, but not because I'm actually interested in rent controls. I'm just so sick of the rental market and I want to buy a house. Okay, so does TWREC want to force people out of the market, out of the rental market? Or landlord market, shall we say? Used to, before I read some basic economics. If you think your landlord is a slumlord now, wait until the state is forcing him to make a loss every month. Oh, yes. Maintenance. The rental we're in now, we can't even use the light in the bathroom because the light switch sparks. It doesn't work. We've told them about it. They haven't fixed it yet. We've got to get onto them. But there you go. Maintenance costs money. In New York, by the 70s, neighborhoods with rent control often looked like Hiroshima. Well, let's just watch Sesame Street. So this is what happens in a recession. Demand is ridiculously high for a lot of property types, and the owner is paying double in interest. The government can't rely on the investment of private individuals to build their new developments, then crush them under high interest. It's going to add to the end consumer rent. The only fix to this problem is replacing the debt financing model, negative gearing model, but it's not easy to replace and will take decades. I can't see the political will there to address it. You saw what happened at the last election where Shorten tried to get rid of negative gearing. I mean, they were all going to keep it. All the polys that already had it, they'll die with that bonus. So yeah. Limit immigration, especially from the third world. There's not a third world, doesn't exist anymore. Look up Hans Rosling. Okay, and the immigrants we're getting to Australia, we're very picky. And, a lot of them, particularly all the ones I know, the international students, they're the ones you want. We're kind of brain draining the world. We've got more advantages than other countries in that regards. But I would suggest immigration should be tied towards building approvals. So the states should compete for immigrants because you want more people, you want to grow your state, you want to grow your population. We've got an aging population here. No one's having kids because they're all on too much soy and their testosterone's too low, so they can't have children. So we need to bring people over. So what you do is, if your state has so many building approvals, so many tens of thousands of building approvals, that's tied to how many people you can get into your state. Make it a process so the states are encouraged to build the infrastructure necessary to house the new Australians that are coming here, because that's what we want. Come on. The old wage mortgage ratio model has been over for a long time. Adaptation is the only solution. Out of my hands. Government more interested in another yes or no vote. Yes, the bloody voice. It's interesting. I was thinking about why they weren't going to tell us, or they couldn't immediately explain the whole voice. I think a big issue with it is in architecture, you'd have a lot of people would go out to these remote communities and talk to the people there and help to get things done and make all these promises, and be the government going there making these promises, and nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened. So this could be another thing. Go and consult with people over something that might happen, and it never happens again. So they become even more disenfranchised with the government and the bureaucracy. I imagine a lot of, maybe we should just fly over all the remote communities and drop a whole lot of libertarian. We're from the government here to help you, educational material. I wonder. Anyway, off topic. Let me get this straight. You want to fix the price of rent to make it easily affordable to more people, at the same time to create less demand for the people to get into rental property. Humans 2023. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. They're screwing it over both ways. Maybe asking for justification of rental increases should be a thing instead. Some landlords have one extra property they couldn't sell, and if their costs have gone up, then they can justify asking for more within reason. Those with 1,000 mortgage-free units won't be approved for a 50% hike in rent. That's leading to significant control and bureaucracy, and that will drive up the cost of rent. So you're putting all this infrastructure in place to manage it when the market is the most effective mechanism to deal with market rents. You just need to get more property out there. You need to make it easier. You need to increase supply, make it easier for people to build. Councils need to get out of the way. Neighbours and other people shouldn't have as much influence. To get rents and property prices under control, they need to crash the minimum wage to equal supply and demand. Let's see what Sunrise got there for a response. Most underrated comment on YouTube today: minimum wage only benefits unions, does not benefit employers or employees. People don't understand. You can't make that argument in Australia. The average, I mean, we've got 83% of people calling for rent controls that have been proven to fail everywhere in the world. Trying to argue to reduce the minimum wage. I remember when I was I went to a drinks event years ago for some group drinks, and I was suggesting, well, we need to reduce the minimum wage or cap it to get more opportunities for people to get into employment. And they all looked at me like I'm a nutcase. Australians will not accept that. They want to have a certain minimum, and they're willing to throw a certain percentage of the population under the bus and limit their opportunities to get into the workforce for it. That's the Australian way. Okay, it's Benthamism. Some suffering for the minority for the greater good of the whole. It's not ideal. I understand economics to a high school level, so no. I'm waiting for the price of rents to come aligned with real wages. Have I replied to that one? Yes. Hang on. Okay. Why not home ownership? Certainly has more to do with its fair share of taxpayer-funded subsidies over the year. Echo. Because of the reasons we've explained. It's not going to work. If anything, if you want to allow people to write off rent, support yourself before you support the state. Charity begins at home. Make rent and food tax deductible. Even your mortgage payments, make that tax deductible as well. What do you reckon? But you have to cut a lot of services to fund that. What would you rather? People voted for this situation. Yep. End Airbnb and negative gearing from Kevin. The reason we have a huge housing shortage is due to a fall in average household sizes. The obvious immediate solution is to incentivize shared accommodation. There are too many houses with spare bedrooms. Yeah, I mean, they'll go you for it, won't they? Yes, let them learn the hard way again. Maybe this time it still won't work. Maybe this time it will still make everything worse like every other time. And Nick, yeah, well, I assume it will. And the ability to own more than one property or to own property at all. The additional properties can be state-owned until eligible buyers arise. Make laws to make old people downsize and laws around how many rooms someone can have empty in their house. Then provide rent controls, properties to everyone else. What a shit country to live in, Nick. Make old people downsize. This isn't China, champ. I don't think they'd even do that in China. I mean, Nick likes his totalitarian government intervention in so many aspects of people's lives. And what's more concerning is this type of thinking will become more and more common as younger Australians see home ownership as success and aspiration to the lifestyle that their parents had as unachievable. And they'll pivot more towards, well, I've got nothing to conserve. Why be a conservative? Come on, comrade, let's tear it all down. So, guys, let's have a bit of a chat about this one. So, if anything, this says or shows quite clearly that the viewers of my channel are not the average Australians, which is kind of worrying. Which is really kind of worrying. Oh, shit, what are we going to do, guys? What are we going to do? I would not be shocked if they bring rent controls in. If they do they're doing so much stupid stuff now. Well, maybe Labor needs to lose an election. Get a Labor Greens coalition at the next one. Could you imagine that happening? Hopefully, we won't go down this path. Hopefully, we'll realize how silly these ideas are. Hopefully, the next few years will continue to be okay. What do you think? Anyway, guys, Thanks for participating in the poll. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out HeiseBim and Heise Does. And if you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, you can support us on YouTube or Patreon. Use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call me when you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.